You have returned to the SRV channel, and we are on the air for our second half of our second class of this May Dharma visit to SRV, Portland, Oregon, wherein we are studying the Akshi Upanishad and centering around these slokas that are so thick and rich, 10 through 15, and a lot of it having to do with being careful of attachment to objects in an untoward way, that materialism and all that we're facing as a problem in the West in this day and age particularly, but also accenting at the same time the tools for overcoming that, generating some interest in things that are non-material, you might say, or of the mind. Thought is not Brahman, but the higher reaches of thought definitely are doorways into Brahman, as qualified non-dualism is a doorway into non-duality. So we are broaching that in these slokas, 10 through 15, and a lot of it has to do with the categories of upper knowledge and the doctrines, or darshanas. They were looking for words that we could understand, but they probably would have said tattvas and darshanas if they knew that we knew Sanskrit. Because if you know Sanskrit, the word opens up depths right away in you that you don't have a word for in English. So if you were to say, oh, they're not going to understand tattvas nor darshanas, what should I say? I'll say categories and I'll say doctrines, because they know that. But then they probably don't know that we have some of us have sort of an aversion to the word doctrine, because some of the doctrines have become old and stale, and we hear that word and we kind of have the reaction to it. Categories, okay, but tattvas and darshanas just mean basically the 24 cosmic principles through which consciousness operates, and doctrines mean darshanas, or ways of clearer seeing, like yoga is a darshana, and Vedanta is a darshana, and Samkhya is a darshana. So ways of looking deeper into, as we were saying in the first half, that which is hiding in plain sight. Smuggling Brahman, as we were saying. So in that respect, then, we had the chart we were looking at that had to do with the secrets of the scriptures. And I hope you can recall them right now. And the visualization is something you memorize too. Like right now, if I wanted to recite the Song of the Sannyasin in 11 verses, Swami Vivekananda, I could do it. But if my mind hadn't done it for a while and I was unsure if certain lines were dropping out, then I would look in my mind and see the book. So I remember when I memorized it, I had the book, and probably don't do this at home, kids, but I was driving along Highway 1 down in San Francisco, reading this and looking at the highway, and I was memorizing the whole poem, and in the drive I memorized all the verses. So now I can look inside and see that written in my mind. So if my recollective mind won't bring it back for me, then I'll look at that page, oh, there it is, So the charts are valuable in that way too. You should visually memorize the charts and then mentally memorize the teachings. And this will give you an advantage to always, actually what it will really do is help you realize one of those secrets, that the scriptures are eternal, that they did come from the mind and that they're imprinted on the mind, but less on the mind of the intellectual, more on the mind of the seer, even more on the mind of the Ishvara, and of course always beyond mind and eternal in terms of aparshaya, no origin to them that you can point a finger to. So in that way, this is all facilitated in the Jnana Marga by people practicing the Yoga Marga. That is somebody who wants to transform themselves, but also realizes that wisdom gets rid of ignorance. Nahi gyanena sadrishyam pavitram iha vidyate, Krishna says to Arjuna. The best purifier of all is knowledge. And of course he's talking about the higher knowledge. So now we know one of the secrets of the scriptures is higher knowledge. We can go to it. It's open to us. It's a door that we need to knock on. And so one of those, or the two at the bottom corner, if you've memorized that chart the way it looked in the first half, you remember at the bottom we had the three proofs of truth, and they were Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava. And Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. So you had to hear it, and then you had to contemplate it, and then you had to realize it, is how they want you to come full circle, is where I left off in the first half. So that's one of those we're taking, and it's like having a sidebar. From one chart you go into that, and it goes to another chart. And this is what one of those 3 proofs of truth looks like. I crafted this for the Hawaii retreat 2 months ago. And we looked at it then because the retreat was called Shravana Manana Nididhyasana, that you needed to hear it and then contemplate it. So the question comes up, how do I contemplate it? Because most people are just pretty much satisfied with hearing it and going away. And maybe they've skimmed the top and understand some sort of it. But they do have a heart's longing to really know it and be able to hand it out, like untainted food again, to people, especially if they have problems or sufferings and things. But an easier way of it, if they understand higher things already, and you don't have to go through their suffering in order to alleviate it with the Dharma, because that's not its best use. It's like meditation, its best use is not like healing. Some people are using meditation for healing, but the real best use for meditation is seeing God face to face, as Ramakrishna said. You see God face to face in meditation. That's the real purpose of meditation. And then Gandhi came along and said, when we see Sri Ramakrishna, we do see God face to face. Gandhi said that about the great master. So anyway, that seeing face to face is nididhyasana, and you need to hear the truth first to do that. But I think the disconnect for most people is the manana, is using the mind to contemplate it. We just don't have the habit of going somewhere and sitting under a tree, or even if our ideals did it, like 12 days and 12 nights under the tree, or 40 days under the Bodhi tree and so forth. Oh, then Muhammad went into the wilderness and so forth. We just all think, well, I think I'm going to go into the wilderness today, and what am I going to do there? Search for water? No, I'm going to have water with me, and I'm going to sit down with this scripture, and I'm going to memorize it and think about it, and I'm going to spend my hours and hours doing that every day. We just don't have that in us anymore. But that's really what it requires you to do. You don't have to go into a wilderness. You can go into your own room, your own study, or an ashram library. Like we have this open to people here, so they can come down from Hawthorne Avenue and pick up books, and they can even get in a little book shack out there in front of our house if they want to walk by. So it's wide open Dharma distribution time, and we're here to see that if you want it, you can have it. And then we're here to back it up if you have further questions about it. So vichara, which was, if you look back at this chart, the second stage of yoga, vichara bhumika, means that you ask questions and you analyze. So that kind of is like manana, or yukti, reasoning about it. So you have to take time to do that, is what I'm saying. You want to stop the clock. Here's my daily routine. Oh, it's time for this. But like I'm saying, people are like, time for meditation, but now I'm going to go out and walk the dog or something, But so my spiritual practice never happens. I think about it a lot, but it never happens. So that disconnect of manana is there. Is that you need to. I would say a way of saying it is just acquaint yourself with the fact that all knowledge lies within you, or that the mind is heaven. People are thinking all sorts of things about where heaven is, but they don't know it's their own dreams. That's heaven. And it's in their mind, heaven. And when you start thinking that way, then you can go there. In sleep tonight, you can go there. You're not just dreaming, you're going to see your ancestors in heaven. And it's as real as the waking state, at least. It's just that you solidify it when you come out here and you have a picture of your dead ancestor there, wave some incense in front of it and so forth. But you can actually go and meet the mind of the ancestor in dream tonight and have a communion with them if you knock and it shall be opened, or if you have these doorways, or these yogis call them nadis, available. So a lot of this chart at the retreat in Hawaii some weeks ago was focusing on manana. I've written a book called Manasana, that you should practice asanas of the mind. If you practiced asanas of the mind first and then did your physical asanas, as we were talking about at the break, the whole thing is different. Physical asana actually is then rather natural and easy. And you don't have the right mental perspective, and so you're thinking that the body can somehow give you a pure mind. That's never going to happen. The body can give itself better health, but health comes and goes to anybody. So the mind is more like an eternal principle. And as we know from this chart, all the way up to the cosmic mind lasts a long time. Its shelf life is like almost infinite. And everything that comes out of it, therefore, is infinite. Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, Purnamanachate. From the internal, the external has come. From the infinite, the finite has come. But since the finite is infinite, only infinite remains in the end. The whole thing is infinite. It's just that you need to take what's inside and what's outside and render them into one indivisible state, as Shankara says. Antaram va. Bahir antaram va is the Sanskrit. The external and the internal, I'm leaving them as two separate things. So the A and the U of Om are separate, never the twain shall meet. Now I need to take them and put them together. So that's what Manana does for you. It takes the external, like the scripture or the words of it, and helps you to fuse it with your own experience or the existence of it inside of you. It already exists. It pre-exists you, the truth. It pre-exists everything. It even pre-exists the cosmic mind, because they hold it later. Ishvariya. So that being the case, and you've reasoned it out with the philosophical basis of Advaita, as given to you by your teacher, then now you can experience it yourself, and you can move on towards nididhyasana. You can relish the scriptures. You see, I used to use that teaching years ago. You relish what you read, not just can I understand that, or read it and put it away. You're actually just extracting essence out of that. Immortal essence that doesn't have any age to it. It's just ever present. So manana will be what we look at here, but let's look at the bullet points of Shravana first. To hear the truth, because that's hard for people to get to. You hear it from an illumined preceptor grounded in the tradition. I mean, that will just X out a lot of angst for you, a lot of problem. You go to a teacher who's just pontificating, or a teacher who's just teaching the letter of the law, or a teacher who is faking it, has really never read the scriptures, and they don't have a guru themselves that's taught them. You're having a lot of risk there. An admixture of stuff is coming from you. It's like the story of Ramakrishna, the man who wanted to study the Gita. So he told his friend on the street one day, I want to study the Gita. Oh, well, I know a Gita teacher, his friend said, but he's busy right now plowing his fields. And so the man said, okay, I'll think about it. So they met the next day. Well, do you want me to put you in touch with that Gita teacher? No, I'd rather learn the Gita from someone who focuses on the Gita, not someone who's mixed up with plows and plowshares and rains and crops, So he was wise, because, he probably would have gotten the teachings from this Gita, who was a farmer, from this guy, and it would have been pretty good teachings. But then one day he would have all of a sudden thought, gee, I feel like farming. So he's getting an admixture of stuff through the transmission. The transmission is very real. This is one of the most important things that Lexikson impressed upon us with SRV. You know what happened to you when you got mantra diksha? No, but you'll find out over time as you use the mantra. And you know what is happening to you as you are on the path and as you're taking in wisdom. It is causing you a transformation inside. It's just a slow going at first. You're filtering through ignorance and levels of things that upbringing and ancestors and karmas and all that happy mess is in there, you see. So the Dharma is cutting through that. Like Vivekananda said, I equate truth to the most acidic substance in existence. It'll burn through everything, but it'll burn through solid things slower, but finer things it'll burn through right away. So if you just have a little bit of ignorance in your mind yet, like Ramchandra did as a teenager, and when Lord Vashishta taught him, get rid of Maya, get rid of the thought of Maya, because he really wasn't even in Maya. He just had this compassion for suffering people, and that was part of Maya. He couldn't get enlightened as long as he still had this compassion. And it's not saying compassion is not a good thing, but it can be a tripping stone to your own realization. It can pull you down, couldn't it? Suffering of people. You have to be very adept in order, like Vivekananda, to be able to work with people and at the same time keep your own liberation intact. See? With a mind and an ego that you have borrowed from the tattvas. So that's by way of saying then, there's this tendrils in you. If they're thin, the truth will cut through them in one lifetime. This means it'll happen swiftly, means probably one lifetime. If you can get enlightened in one lifetime, game over, then you're free for all times, you see. You don't have to come back to these three lower chakras, Muladhara and Manipura and Svadhisthana. You don't have to come back to those three. You go to the heart, you stay at the heart, you go to Shiva, you see his feet, you're there forever now, you see. No falling out of it again and forgetting it, having to get a guru, having to learn about the scriptures, having to reinvent everything, reinvent the spiritual wheel, and then all of a sudden, I got free again. When you always were free, and you were free before, but you fell out of it, you see. That's another repetition cycle that you don't want to fall into. That's why my teachers used to say, I don't believe in a post-mortem emancipation that they're teaching in Christianity. I believe in Jivan Mukta, living, liberated soul, right now and always. My freedom is now. And if I'm thinking in the three phases of time, like I had it but I lost it, or I'll get it today, or I'm going to get it in the future, not good enough. It's not moksha. The definition for moksha is a state of liberation always at hand. The best definition I heard given by Shankara in the Vedagachudamani. It's a state of liberation already at hand. It can't be gotten by yoga practice. It can't be gotten by bowing at the Guru's feet. It can't be gotten through evolution. And he goes on and lists it. That these are subtle misconceptions that people fall into. And they're practitioners, but they're still short of the truth. So they're holding these subtle impressions in their mind that need to be routed out, like having compassion for suffering. That needs to go. Nobody suffers except Ishvara. There was a story about a man sitting in front of Sri Ramakrishna saying, well, you speak about Mother Kali, and she's flying mind kites, in the bazaar of human existence, and every once in a while one snaps the string and the kite goes free and she claps and dances. But why is she holding on to us in the first place and keeping us down? Why doesn't she just free us all at once? Because, her glee is our suffering kind of thing. She likes to see us suffering. And the master turned to him and said, but who are you? You see, you're causing a schism between mother and yourself. You're the one that's you're the one that's taking on the string. You're the one that's holding it and not letting yourself free. And you're sort of giving that power over to some goddess somewhere. Thine only is the hand that holds the rope that drags thee on. I don't have to look inside to that book, that's in that book I memorized. It's in my ready memory. Thine only is the hand that holds the rope that drags thee on, Vivekananda said. You're holding the rope that binds you. No one else, no god, no goddess. So cease lament. Let go thy hold. Sannyas in bold, say Om Tat Sat Om, is the rest of the verse. So all of this is by way of saying that moksha is always at hand. And if you hold that perspective, like we were talking at the break, and then you go about your sadhana, or you have the mental asana of that, and then you do your hatha yoga, or you have the idea that my breath is the breath of all beings, and then you do your breathing exercises, it's all an entirely different level of understanding comes to you, quickly too. It's a swift awakening. So Shravana, to hear the truth, you hear it from an illumined preceptor grounded in the tradition. I mean, that's just set in stone, and so many people disrespect that. Maybe not even consciously. They just say, oh, I can get it from anyone. Like picking up a hitchhiker recently on the Big Island, which is probably not the best thing to do to pick up hitchhikers anymore, but you feel that compassion, you see. So you want to help someone, so you pick them up. You know, a friend of mine is telling me this. He says, but then the person wanted to give me Montrediction in the car. And I said, really? Who was he? He was a lawyer. Yeah, so they're passing out Montrediction as if they've realized it and they have the right to then transmit it to anyone and everyone, whether they're ready or not, even a hitchhiker that picks you up. Well, that's not getting the truth, or hearing the truth from an illumined preceptor who's grounded in a tradition. I mean, let's just admit it. Let's call a spade a spade. You go, like I found Swami Sheshan, and go, that's the most amazing man I've ever seen. He's saying the most amazing things I ever heard. There was no doubt when I met him. You can't mistake a being like that for someone you pick up on the beach. I mean, that happened again on the beach. Someone on the beach wanted to give someone else initiation. Well, who are you? I'm a surfer. Well, what right have you to give initiation if you're just a surfer? You need to be a Dharma teacher. You need to have realized the Dharma. You need to have gone through the process of hearing it, mulling it over, if you want to say that, and realizing it, and then step out and share it. You want to qualify yourself. Qualification is king. That's my favorite bumper sticker, and I'm the author of it. Qualification is king. You qualify yourself, and it's true in any walk of life. Whatever you do, you qualify yourself first before you share it. You don't pretend it. Like one of my students early on in the early days of SRB came, I'm talking about the goal of life and samadhi. Oh, she said, I've already had the highest samadhi. I said, really? What are you doing here with me? You see? And another person I read, who was a famous psychic, you see, put in her brochure that she'd had nirvikalpa samadhi. She wouldn't even be putting out brochures if she had. She wouldn't be in business if she had had nirvikalpa samadhi. She would have renounced the world. So these misconceptions of people are rife. You know, I mean, they're pervasive in the human mind. It's a form of pervasive ignorance that's stampeding through the mind all the time. So the tradition says it different. Is the tradition just hidebound? When we say tradition, we mean the living tradition of spirituality that's passed on from guru to shishya over time. Unbeknownst to the rest of the world, who's involved in their petty little mundane superficial activities on the surface, there is something going on that they don't know about. This is a transmission of spiritual truth from guru to shishya. And it escapes them completely. And they can even be in a tradition like Christianity and forget that Christ and his apostles were enacting the age-old tradition of guru and shishya, and that they should probably be doing the same. But you don't go to the guru in the West. Why? Because the church has taken its place. The guru is not popular. But did you ever get enlightenment from a church? Did you ever hear the Dharma in a church? Did your parents ever get higher teachings in a church? It would have had to have been a very specialized church. Maybe let's just call it a tradition. See? An eternal tradition, a sanatana dharma. There are words for it, you see, in Sanskrit. We don't have any, because we don't have that. So, hear it from an illumined preceptor grounded in the tradition. Now, I'll spend the rest of this half talking about that. Second bullet point is, hear it with intelligence intact and heart open. You see, you have mind and you have heart. So open both channels and fuse them. And this will make you noble, make you universal. And you'll be able to naturally filter out things that aren't true. It's not like you're just wide open to everything and naive. Because your mind is checking your heart. You see, so Swami Vivekananda made a great comparison about that. He said, Bhakti Yoga, it's okay. The problem is, it kind of descends into personality worship. Jnana Yoga, that's also okay, except the mind gets too sterile. So how about let's put the two together, you see. How about the heart checks the mind so it stays wet, you see, and sweet. And the mind checks the heart so it doesn't become, weak and sentimental, I think is the words he used. So then you've got this blending of heart and mind. Well, enough said about that bullet point. Intelligence intact, heart open, go and hear the teachings. That's true Shravana or Shruti. Now, hear it to know both its outer and inner meaning. See how good it gets? I mean, somebody came along in your lifetime and put this together, gave you this threefold teaching. Someone else came along and gave you the dynamics of it. So now you know that it's deeper than it sounded on the surface. And you know that there's someone around who actually plumbed the depths, you see, so that it could come out with words to describe it to you. So what more proof do you need? And why aren't you following it and getting free? Free of suffering first, free of ignorance next. And then, free of any idea of moksha being in the future or coming from the past. It's right now. I am that. First you say, anything that changes, I'm not. Then you say, what am I then? And then you say, or who am I? See? And then you say, I am that. That's Ramana Maharshi's way of teaching. It's like Naham, Kaham, and Saham. It's the way he expressed it, how that, much like this threefold thing here. Anything that changes, I am not. Naham, I am not. You see. Then, what am I then? Who am I? You see. Atma Vichara, who am I? Who am I? It's his famous method. That wasn't just his, it all the way went back to Vishishta and before. And then finally you say, I am, you see. Since I'm not that, who am I? Then I am that, you see. So it's all a separation of God and mammon, or wheat and chaff, whatever age you put it in. So this is what I'm saying here. The outer and inner meaning needs to come, because you're just getting the outer meaning. And that applies a lot to parashaya, or paravidya. I'm sorry, aparavidya. It applies a lot to that you're just getting the outer meaning and walking away thinking that you have it. That's not just happening in school, from grade school up through college. It's also happening in your spiritual life, that you're just satisfied with one reading of the Gita and you think you understand it. But any sloka you can unwrap. It's like, na asatya vidyate vidyate sattaha, or ya dipo nivatastu nengate sopama shmitta. Like a candle in a windless place, my mind focused on the Atman. And that was afforded to me by everything I learned about the Atman, leading up to it, from an illumined preceptor who was an authority that I could believe. And my ignorance died away forever. I was left in my original state again. I don't even have to say, who am I anymore? I can now say, I am. That's the point of it. Moving on, hear it for purposes of enlightenment. Because yes, there are people who are hearing it for different reasons. You might even say, I want to teach others. So the ego's gotten a hold of it right away. You see, you want to be this great teacher. There's somebody who was coming here last year who's now left was like that. What you're saying is so great. I want to know it so I can teach it to others. I said, that's not the point. Know it deeply for yourself, and then you will teach others. And that's what the Ramakrishna order has always told the swamis who come west. You're not teaching anything, you're sharing what you know. Or Ramakrishna said, just avail yourself, told Swamiji, just avail yourself of this teachings, your very bones will teach. Anywhere you go, you'll emanate the teachings. You don't even have to say, I am a teacher, come to me. Lotus has to open in the woods, so the bees will come. None of that's going to be applicable. So do it all for the purposes of enlightenment, be that pure in your intention. I am free, and I want to realize I'm free. You never say I'm going to get free or I'm bound. You say I am always free, and I want to realize that fully in this lifetime. And so you put the least amount of potential obstacle in the way. You carry the least amount of baggage with you as you go towards Jivan Mukta. And Vivekananda said that's very important, because this path that we're going about today is to help others in karma yoga. So I'm asking you, would you please engage in karma yoga and put off your liberation till later? It's one of his teachings. We can have moksha and mukti later. Put that off. He was telling this to realized souls, not to ordinary souls, but to the brother monks. I want moksha. Oh, you are free. What do you think seeing Sri Ramakrishna is face to face? That is freedom. He'll never forsake you. So now, see what the world shape is in. If you're free and have moksha, are you going to be effective in helping others? So there's that extreme, and then this extreme of putting Nirvikalpa Samadhi in a brochure or something. But what you want is some moderate middle way, which is practical. So, put this immediate moksha and samadhi off because it makes me worthless to help anyone when I'm in samadhi. I mean, Sri Ramakrishna couldn't even move. They'd sit around for hours waiting for him to come out of samadhi. And when he came out, he couldn't even recognize his chief student or his wife. He was just, had to get it back. They give him a glass of water, you see. And so he'd go, oh yeah, I know where I am now. I'm in the realm of the 5 elements, you see. So consciousness had to come down from higher reaches to the 5 elements in groups of 5 and reacquaint itself again with the body. So a little bit extended here, the outer and inner meeting the thing, and for the purposes of enlightenment are some of the dynamics of what? Shravana, to hear it. So, he's got some bullet points here that you can cogitate. I mean, in a sense, you're already doing manana on Shravana, aren't you? So you're getting well trained early on before you even get to manana. You're doing manana on Shravana when you approach a teacher and a tradition. So then finally, or penultimately, hear it with a view to inform others about it. Okay, now we're getting somewhere, you see. Now that I know it and I hear it, let me share this with you. With my daughter, let me share this with my father, at the right moment and the right time. Let me intrigue you a little bit about what I'm into. See, like my parents, I call them, I tell them what I'm into. They're very interested. You see, I say, "Well, come to retreat." Oh no, we're just going to go on with our conventional life. So they're getting it sort of vicariously through their children. See, a little of it, you see, but that's not enough. You're going to have to put yourself in the fire. Swami Sheshananda used to say, in the West, you're baptized with a little water in a church. That's not going to do it. The Guru baptizes not with water, but with fire. And that fire is called yoga, and that's fire of yoga is called transformation. You've got to change yourself. Like that joke of a person sitting there, praying to God, Caucasian fellow, you see. They say, "Oh Lord, I'm ready to change now as long as it won't cause me any suffering or any problem or any inconvenience." That's his prayer. And God is somewhere laughing, you see, or crying, as the case may be. God's laughing, the Guru's crying. So, because I have to, tow this, I have to hoe this row, you see, of people who don't understand, first of all, how crucial it is and how dangerous Maya is. I've had a lot of people have told me, "Oh, everything's going to be all right. You teach about Maya being, beware of Maya and all this." I don't believe that. Everything's going to be all right. Well, one person told me that one year, and the next year she had cancer and died. And I told her, that'll change. You'll think it's okay, but nothing's ever okay in Maya. Nothing is ever okay in Maya. So you do have to be aware of it, and not in a fearful, let's try and escape from it. Good luck with that if you're in form, but you have to know what protects you. These are shields, Dharma shields. That's why Holy Divine Mother Gloria holds a shield in one of her 10 arms. Get behind that. and you're going to be safe. Then everything is going to be fine. You can't go out in the battlefield and say everything's fine. Even monks will get hit by a stray arrow, Sri Ramakrishna said. But the householder has a fort that the walls protect him. You see. So the householder actually has a better time of it, less risky, if they follow the Dharma. So you can inform others about this, and finally hear it to destroy ignorance for all time. If you did study the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, you'd find out that Kaivalya had a 7-step process, getting free, and that you dealt with karmas early on. And then all of a sudden you're at the 6th step, and it's like, oh, now you have to deal with subtle karmas. Oh man, I thought I was through this, you see. It's a really shocking teaching for almost anyone that comes upon it with any cognizance at all. So they say, well, I thought karmas were already gone. Oh no, I'm talking about old karmas and old samskaras. Not the ones that you were able to deal with in this life. Oh, I saw what I did. Now I'm going to erase that. You see, now everything's fine. But it's not fine in your past lifetimes. So you're going to have to pull that forward somehow. Some great souls take their whole karma, if they have any, and bring it forward into the present lifetime and work it all out. Some souls, and these are teachings from Holy Mother, bring a portion of their karma from Sanchita to Prarabdha and work that out. And then the next lifetime they'll work out a little more, Krama Mukti. Some souls bring some portion of the karma forward to work it out in this life, and they get distracted. And they never get around to working out that karma. I hear it all the time. Like, I'm a musician, so I hear all the time, oh, I played the cello once. I wish I had kept it up. I wish I had have. I wish I had have. See? But in spiritual terms, I read the Gita once. I wish I had have found a teacher to teach me deeply about that, you see. Because I found out later that there's such a thing as the 3 proofs of truth, you see. And I never followed them. I realized I never followed them. I didn't go deep enough. I had people who wrote me from the East Coast recently on an email said, we've seen every one of your YouTube classes, some of them many times. I mean, there's dozens and dozens of them out there now. And it saved us from depression and despair. We thank you so much, my husband and I thank you so much. See? And then next email comes with questions, you see. So now they're questioning about, from a standpoint of non-depression, you see, and now they're dharmies, you see. Oh, what a great richness this has given me. Now I need to question it. You see, so the process goes on. And you need to have an enthusiasm for it. If I leave here next week and I'm gone 2 months, and you haven't looked back on these slokas and gone under a tree or in your study and thought about them, then I'm just coming back again to repeat the same old thing again. But I want to come back and see that you've digested some of it. Sri Ramakrishna said, you're feeding pigeons on a park bench. You see, here's some peas, here's some corn. Peck, 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 gobble, gobble, gobble. See, and then you're curious, so you pick the pigeon up, you see, and it's got a crop, evidently, and all the peas and corn have gone down to the crop. So you feel the pigeon's crop, you see, and this all in its crop, peas, corn. And none of it ever went and got digested. That's Sri Ramakrishna's story about giving out teachings to people, and they take it into the surface of their crop, like only the outer meaning, and they never take it down and digest it and benefit from it. And he said this was a way of the Hindus when he was in the 1800s, when he was giving out teachings. An avatar was giving them teachings and they couldn't digest it. So now you know why he said God is helpless. And he also said God laughs on 2 occasions. You see, one of them is when the doctor says to the mother, I'll save your child, don't worry. But God knows that child's going to die. So these are things that you have to see from the standpoint of practical reality, calling things as they are, and then stepping back from them. Sri Ramakrishna said, never study Maya close up. Study it from a distance. And science, by the way, is studying it close up by splitting the atom, reaching a power, releasing a power for destruction. It's got them into a world karma. Meanwhile, they're going around with their electric appliances and their car waxes that resist water, and they're using atoms and particles and molecules for all sorts of great things for the benefit of an opulent society, and they're just stuck in the mud of Maya with a net in their mouth. And that net's called death. And they think they're fine. And in fact, they think they're not more than fine. They're increasing their love of objects with conceit and arrogance. They're expanding them, intensifying objects, you see, with, oh, look what I did, you see. And maybe I'll give it to you, country, if you can trade with me, you see. I know I'm going to put in a bargain on you, and China won't get this stuff, you see. Free trade becomes a mockery and based upon selfishness. So you should see how the seer sees the political process. And if you come to the retreat this weekend, you'll see how Swami Sheshananda looked at our political process and what libels he leveled on it from the standpoint of a person who didn't care what happened to the world. That's the thing about them. They know the world's an illusion, it's a dream. So they don't care what happens to it because it's just going to keep cycling. People who die are just bubbles in an ocean who popped, and they're going to form another bubble again and again in that same ocean. So they don't have any sensitivity about nations coming and going, or people coming and going, or personalities. They're no respecter of that. They want one thing for you, to realize your eternal divine nature. Vedanta is all about two things: the divinity of mankind and the oneness of existence. That's all. And those are two truths. They're not to be argued about or contended with or compared with other things. Those are the two truths of the matter. In other words, you can put it this way: mankind's not a sinner. It's the worst sin to call a man a sinner. And number two, there are not 24 cosmic principles. There's just one truth. And this has been the projection of the mind that thinks there are 24 cosmic principles. I mean, if you want to sing it, you can. The Advaita is one of our favorite go-to luminaries for that kind of thing. No veja veda kamidam na chahetu tarkyam vachamago charamidam na mano na buddhi evam katam hi bhavata katayami tatvam gyanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham gyanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham. Come in July when I come back here, and we'll sing this whole thing together and study it. It's the Gyanamritam Stotram 2, because we sang it last year and studied some of the verses. So if you come to the summer seminar, it's called, here in Portland, we'll sing it all right here in this room and study what it means. But as far as this one verse 17 goes, he says, you ask about Brahman? How can I speak of that which transcends speech and words, and which is beyond mind and its conceptions, and which outstrips intellect and its reasoning power, and it goes beyond knower and knowledge? All I know is that I am pure existence, wisdom, and bliss. I am that. I'm as boundless as the sky and infinite like space. So Advaita takes that kind of perspective when you come to him and talk to him about the truth. But that Advaita has gone through this process and knows how to transmit it to you. It's just that he's beyond it. How can I speak about Brahman to you? The closest way I can come to explaining it to you is to hear about it, meditate on it, and realize it. What else? Now go to a Dharma teacher to find out the dynamics of that. What you're supposed to do, when, how, in a timely fashion, after doing certain preliminary practices. It's all Dharma, Swadharma. But it's not Adharma. Dharma is something that they're engaged in there, which is very unfortunate. So there, we've looked at Shravana, and I don't know how much time we have remaining or so. In the remaining 15 minutes, we look at Manana. Like I said, we've already done some Manana on Shravana, so you're not unused to it. Manana is to contemplate that truth, subject to the testimony of the seers. When we talk about arrogance, it's mentioned here, arrogance of people. So they're very arrogant about God in America. We know God. You can't tell us about that. They don't know the first thing about God. And religion is not telling them the first thing about God. What is the first thing about God? Thou art that. They're not going to say that. That's blasphemy. So, liable of liable, it's the worst sin to call another man a sinner. That's the second thing, see, to know about God. So, Swami Vivekananda said, that's a direct quote from him. Came here and he found the preachers of Christianity calling their parishioners sinners. You don't teach them that. You teach them their divinity. Don't you think they'll get out of sin faster if they know they're divine? It's sort of like having a toothache, not going to the dentist or trying to deny it, but you can't sleep all night. Well, I don't have it. So it's not sensible. See? So subject these questions you have to the testimony of the seers. Vashishta, Shankara, Gaudapada, Patanjali, Vedavyas, Swami Vivekananda, Jesus, Buddha, and so forth and so on. Great seers, they have testimony, they put out the scriptures. Why aren't you reading them? There's a lot of them. And you're not going to them for your questions? What's this about? Sri Ramakrishna used to said, if you have a court case, you go to a lawyer. If you have an illness, you go to a doctor. But you want to know about God and you don't go to a guru? That's not fair. That's not wise either. There are beings out there who have qualified themselves in the Dharma, and you go to them to find out. If you have to go to India, fine, or Tibet, fine. But we need to also start to acknowledge that there needs to be teachers coming out of our Western society who know the Western society and know the language. Westerners must learn to teach Dharma to Westerners. I've heard that Swami Vivekananda said that. I haven't found it written to prove it yet, but sounds like something he would say. So we need to develop parents who have heard the Dharma, so we can be born to them, so then we can learn it, so we can pass it on to our kids. That's crucial for American society. Do we have another 2 generations to do that? Or is a third world war on the horizon sooner than that? My teacher used to say that. 2 world wars have come and gone since Swami Vivekananda. The third's on the horizon. You American people better watch out. So do we have enough time to complete this kind of process? Which is why I sit here every weekend, or there, San Francisco, Portland, India, wherever I am, and give these teachings out. Even if there's only 12 or 24 watching, or 1,000 watching after the fact on YouTube, or another 10,000 after that, we're storing up Dharma teachings. So when you get the yen, to know the truth, the Dharma is the closest thing to it. You have an open pathway to that. You can open channels to it without much effort. Does it take a lot of effort to push the button on your computer? Well, it might take a lot of effort to get a server and understand the software, I know. But it can be done, because there are experts for that too, and that's kind of the point, you see. The Dharma teacher is an expert, a computer expert for the computer of your mind. So he'll show you how it works and how it's misfunctioning. And the software might need some upgrading, you see. Oh, morality and ethics, that's okay. Here's a new software. It's called Dharma. Oh, your memory isn't working too well. See, you need to replace your RAM. Oh, I'm sorry, you need to replace your RAM with ROM. See? So, So, testimony of the seers, again, I could go on for the rest of the 10 minutes about this, but let's go on to measure it against what the scriptures declare. So you consulted the scriptures, right, back here. So now measure it. I mean, that's one of the dynamics, is just to compare this to that. See, what did they say? Now, I would say be careful not to get caught in the conflict of apparent perspectives that could conflict. That's why you need the teacher. Because if Patanjali said something in one age and Vedavyasa said something different in another, you have to know how that dovetails. That they weren't contending with each other, that it was just meant for the particular age and the people there. Like, you wouldn't teach fishermen, the Jnana Yoga. But 700 years later, in India, you would, if you're a Shankara. Because you've got Gyanis there who have been raised for lifetimes in Dharma. They're ready to hear it. So you have to know age to age that what Christ and Shankara said is exactly pretty much the same thing. They agree with each other, but the differences are in time and culture and language and so forth. And you need an expert. So you measure these things against each other, and you cut your teeth, philosophical teeth on them. Because now pretty soon you're willing to take any position, you see. Didn't we look at that? The truths of the scriptures had 4 different ways of interpreting. So you need to be able to go to the seers, to the Ishvara forms, the avatars, and see what they all said. See? The essence will be the same. See? Birds have nests, foxes have holes. You have no place to lay your head here. Oh, I see. 2,000 years later, that's Ramakrishna saying, everyone needs to renounce this world quick, because it's not real. So you'll get the gist of it all, and you'll become wide at the same time. You'll be able to hold conflicting views as each one existing in their own sphere, like facets of a diamond. Well, yeah, so he said that in Samkhya, that there were 2 realities. Kapila said there's Purusha and Prakriti. Later, Vedavyasa said, no, not possible. There's only one reality. There can't be 2. They'll conflict with each other. You have to know how to solve this apparent dichotomy, philosophically speaking, so that you won't get waylaid and come up with the premature conclusion that these 2 great souls, each great in their own way, were somehow disagreeing with each other. My best way of solving that dilemma is that Kapila was talking about, clouds in a sky when he said Purusha Prakriti. So there are many Purushas. Oh, I'm sorry, Advaitas can't accept that. Well, why not? Because these clouds are all in one sky. Don't get caught in appearances, see, philosophically or otherwise. So you need to be able to, it's one of the advantages of comparing views, like we just did back here, and also keeping current on what the scriptures say. You might want to consult the Quran. It's the most recent of all the Middle Eastern scriptures. That's why people are going to it. Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad were all one religion that people sundered into 4 parts. That's the Middle Eastern stream. You have to know how to see them as one. And also at the same time know their differences and be okay with them. Because each one applied to a different person at a different time, a different race, and in the end, they might reapply to different races again and come current when they might seem old now, see, like the 10 Commandments. Nowadays we're taking the 10 Commandments and we're saying, thou shalt not kill. But thousands of years later we're saying, thou cannot kill. It's not a commandment anymore, it's a yama in yoga, that it's not possible to kill anything. Well, they probably didn't think that way back in Moses' time. They were traveling from place to place, pursued by races that were killing them. They didn't have time to sit in a cave and meditate on Brahman or under a bo tree for 49 days and say, oh, I see death is all an illusion. I mean, this is manana. This is what you have to do with the truths of the scriptures. So you ought to be versatile enough to hold more than one perspective. Maybe hold 2 ideals. Discuss all of this daily with the spiritual preceptor. Like I have a student right now who's living next door to me, has come to stay. He'll stay for a year or 2, and we'll be able to talk all the time about the Dharma. and without any distance or time, you know, in a way. You won't have to wait for me to come back 2 months in July, you know, although you can email me. But to sit there and talk face to face with someone who's your teacher is very validating for what you want to know, and it'll do away with misconceptions, subtle ones that you might be holding. Clear it up in an instant, you see. Like collyrium in brackish water. All of a sudden, a little drop of that and it's all clear. Refine it all with ongoing worship and meditation. So we prescribe, particularly in SRV and in the Ramakrishna order, 4 yogas, not just one. And when we say one, the faith-based traditions of the West are pretty much devotion-oriented. Fine, faith and devotion. St. Augustine and Thomas Aquinas, and you know, they pretty much put forth the idea of salvation and sin. St. Paul. It was a gift of St. Paul, the idea of sin, my teacher used to say. So that's all well and good, but that's only one yoga. So you shift over to some other yoga, and it's just Gyanam, you see. Or you shift somewhere else in, you know, some schools of Buddhism, we're just meditating, that's it. We're Zen Buddhists. Or you shift somewhere else, and it's all action. No respite whatsoever, but just ongoing action. But all 4 of these yogas need to be coalesced, integrated. That's called integral yoga. It's called Purna yoga. The synthesis of yoga, according to Aurobindo. So these are naturally synthesized, like we were saying in the Secrets of Scriptures. It's naturally integrated. You don't have to integrate them, but you do have to realize that they're integrated and move to do that inside of you, because you may be holding. It may be the missing link that you're just practicing 2 yogas, but a 3rd yoga is going to give you your enlightenment. You can go on your whole life being good at 2 yogas, but all of a sudden you bring meditation into it, he says here. Refine it all with ongoing worship and meditation. So you're doing action and you were doing study of scripture. All of a sudden bhakti and dhyanam, or raja, become available to you, and that broke the camel's back. You brought those 2 yogas in, all of a sudden I'm free. In this lifetime. If I hadn't done that, I would still be bound at the time of my death, or consider myself bound. So, another dynamic of manana. Finally, perceive it as the internal voice of the Vak Devi. We consider this, and come to the retreat again this weekend, consider it very important that we become to know the Divine Mother of the universe. And as I started off chanting the class today, mantranam jiva bhuta tulya smrita Sopama Smrita. Smrita, I must remember the Vakdevi, who's the power and the meaning in words. That's her subtle form. She's hiding in words. Just like atomic power is hiding in atoms, she's hiding in subtle atoms of your intelligence. And she has her dynamic power, called Kundalini. When it rises, it transforms the entire being from the ground up. Nothing can resist that power. And it's not for the power of destruction of other races and other people. It's for the highest good of everyone. So, very important, these words and what they mean are the internal voice of her. That's why Sri Ramakrishna used to say, she sits in my throat and she speaks and I do nothing. I just open my mouth. You see. I think it's kind of funny because if you see one of Sri Ramakrishna's samadhi pictures, you see 2 eyes back in his mouth, like 2 of his teeth are shining back there. And it looks like there's a being in there, you know, looking out. Oh, Saraswati, I see your eyes, you see. You know, you should look at that, his picture like that. You see these 2 little white, old camera must have caught some reflection of 2 of his teeth. So that's the internal voice that you want to hear. That's Om, really. Her word is Om, her voice is Om. And that's the power in everything. Right on down to the atomic particle. But that power has gotten gross. You see, it's far flung from the source. What are you going to do with it? It's like you're saying, here, I'll give you this outer power too. Let's see what you do with it. See? Oh, no, my child. You don't hurt anyone. You didn't learn nonviolence yet? You're killing animals and eating them. You're destroying. I mean, the Jains, my Jain children, they won't even dig a well because they're going to hurt insects. See? Learn from them how to be sensitive and subtle and proceed slowly and carefully and consciously for the good of all beings. From the subhumans up to the humans, to the ancestors, to the gods, all the way up to the rishis and the Trinity, because that's where her wisdom is pouring down through that, isn't it? It's pouring down through that, and you're going to block those avenues? Going to turn earth into a hell instead of a paradise? See, read your Quran. So this is my discourse, second discourse for today, and we didn't make it very far into any further slokas, but we examined these 5 slokas really in depth. That is manana. It's Shravana manana. And you should acquire this ability to do that for yourself, because then when you do, your very bones will teach, as Ramakrishna told Vivekananda. Om Sato Ma Sadgamoya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamoya Mrichor Ma Amritam Gamaya Abira Mayeti Rudrayate Dakshinamukam Tenamam Pahinicham. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from the illusion of death to immortality. Reach us through and through, O Divine Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.